Hello and welcome to another session of AZMAT System tutorials. In this session, we're going to run AZMAT System under Windows XP XL version 14 or XL version 2010. That's what it's known, but internally it's actually XL version 14. File, help, have a quick look, Microsoft Excel 2010. Again, this version 14, additional version information in here, 2010. System information will give us the operating system name, Windows XP, Microsoft Windows XP Professional. Okay, let's start up with opening the AZMAT System program file. So file open, and if I show you just about that, we are running on a USB stick G Excel 2010 AZMAT. And the AZMAT System program file, open as read-only. Always open the program file read-only. You may notice that all the other, well, not all of them, but quite a few, all these extensions are 4-character extension .xlsx AZMAT System files. There are a few others like this one. You can see Excel macro 1.xls, main program file .xls. So there are files which will original version which will still run in here .xls, but the new files, all new files will be saved here under with 4-character extension. Okay, I'm opening this file as read only. Simple password just for that. But the AZMAT System password is a little bit longer. Always let the user know what's happening. Please wait, you should wait here until you are ready. There. Let the users know what's happening. You're opening various files. 2-character ID. I'm using AA. You can use your own, whatever you like. 2-character ID, they both have to be letters. And your own password, of course. Watch the status bar, what's happening. Various files are opening, and let the user know what's happening all the time. Right. Notice that because now we are in XL 14, which is Excel 2010, the menus up here, they're not there anymore. Only earlier versions of Excel, you could have the menus there. Later versions from Excel 2007 onwards, and this is Excel 2010, the menus will be here, then add in, and then as it'll show in the next message. The reason I'm using 2 messages is because there's a limit to the number of characters you can put in a particular message. And it would have been much longer than the limit in one. So I couldn't fit it all in one message box. So I'm using 2 message boxes, split the message in 2. So this is the first one, just to let them know that the system is now ready, and required command from AZMAT menus, JKX, and so on, all the way 9 menus, or from any Excel menus. So these are all Excel menus. AZMAT menus will be here, add-ins, as we'll show in the next message box. There, in this message box, to see and or use any of the AZMAT menus or commands, click add-ins situated rightmost on the Excel command bar, which will be here, rightmost. After you click OK to this message, then we'll get that add-ins, and then you'll get access to AZMAT menus. Click down arrow situated on the right of required menu, then click on the required command. So click OK. Watch this space here. Add-ins will come here. There. Now if I click that, I have access to all the AZMAT system menus. Click the down arrow next to the actual and so on. So today we are going to have a look at the X menu in detail, all these commands, what they mean. So just before we begin, let's just use two things. One is to restore this size, then click. I'm going to save the user file. Add-ins, utility menu, save AZMAT data file. Puts the date and time. So today is 28th of August, 11:01 a.m. That's the UK time. Right, let's begin. Add-ins, X menu, and we'll go through each of these commands in detail. In an earlier tutorial, we went through quickly, just as an overview of each of these commands. In this particular tutorial, I'm going through in detail each command, what they mean, what it is actually, so on. So the first one, present value. Control V enters calculated present value in current cell. So if I enter, depending on the number of cells I select, it will enter present value in those cells. Right. This command calculates the present value using the following parameters. Curve, that is the reference curve. Because it's a yield curve, so it's actually in investment banking terms, we just call it curve, if you like. But it's yield curve, it means the yield curve file, like ZR/USD.XLS or .XLS in earlier versions of Excel. Cash flow, like that, you have. Present value method, PV method. Present value is PV. The method, so it's here, B for bid, could be bid, offer, mid, and so on, or all of them. So if I select 5 cells, it will have all 5 present values. So bid, present value, using the bid, offer, mid, and so on. So the other one is yield basis. I'll have to take this off so I can read it behind. Yield basis 0 to 4. We'll go into the detail exactly what each this number means. And there's also yield frequency and the calculation method 1 or 2. And using all these parameters, it calculates the present value. Any valuation command in AZMAT System can be started from any worksheet in a workbook. So this particular in here, I'm just going to actually do the Windows arrange. So we can see the actual worksheet name and the horizontally scroll bars or the vertically scroll bars. Because I rearranged the size of the Excel sheet, I had to use the Windows arrange all command to see the scroll bars and to adjust the worksheet, this particular workbook name, workbook file rather, workbook or file to fit into this new Excel space. So there's your worksheet. So any valuation command in AZMAT system can be started from any worksheet in a workbook, as long as that workbook contains a worksheet called AZMAT. So I could have other worksheets here, sheet 1, 2, 3, or whatever else you want to call it, those names. You can start them from any of those worksheets as well, as long as this workbook, this is the AA.XLSX workbook, or if you like, you could also call it this file. As long as this file contains a worksheet called AZMAT, then you can use any valuation, the valuation command, any of these valuation commands as shown in the X menu: present value, yield, present value and yield, internal rate of return, and so on. Any of these commands can be started from any worksheet, right? From any other worksheet, as well as from this worksheet, as long as that workbook, that is the file, contains AZMAT worksheet. The AZMAT worksheet must have a parameters area defined as AZ. So the parameters here, parameters area AZ, if you notice, I've selected that parameters area, and in the top here, the name AZ appears. If I put it away somewhere, gone. So that's the parameters area, AZ. This must be present on a worksheet called AZMAT in any workbook, Excel workbook or file, if you like. Then you can start valuation commands from anywhere else. AZMAT system always clears the contents of the duration and yield cells. Okay, so you have the duration here and the yield. Both of these are always cleared, the contents of the duration yield cells, and enters the result of present value calculation in the present value cell within the AZ parameters area. So whenever you do any calculations anywhere, say if you want the present value and yield here, it will first clear up whatever yield was there, whatever duration was there from previous calculation, or if you had just simply entered it, it clears both of these cells and enters the result here of present value, always. Because you will see later on when you get to know more about investment banking calculations that there's these are related, both present value and yield. So you can't just put some other incorrect value here. So for each present value, the yield would be different depending on what the present. For example, here, I'll give you an example. Here, IRR stands for internal rate of return. So the yield, what the yield percent is actually IRR when PV, that's the present value, is equal to 0. So when the present value is 0, as it says here, this yield is actually called internal rate of return, IRR. Now, wherever my current cells are, as you have seen demonstrated in other tutorials, if you use control keys, then the result is entered in both the current cell or cells, one or more cells, depending on the number of present values you require, whether it's just for the bid, offer, mid, and then these are special ones. We'll go into that later. Or you could just say A, in this case, all. In this case, you need to have 5 cells selected, either this way or that way, Then you have the result both in the current cells as well as in the present value, depending on what it is. Okay, let's just go through this. Continue with this. This command can be used as follows by clicking on the present value command from the X menu. So either you can just simply click that present value command, or by first selecting the result cells. So where you actually want the results, select the result cell or cells, and then using Control V, press the V key while holding down the Control key. So when you say Control key, I mean hold down the Control key and then press the letter V. The cash flow can be either from a previously defined cash flow area in any worksheet of any open workbook, or the user could specify the cash flow area by simply selecting the relevant area with the mouse. So, for example, I have this here. Up to there, I think, there. So this area I've defined as cash flow date 1, CF date 1. CF stands for cash flow, short for that, if you like. So CF date 1, cash flow date 1. By entering number 1 there, I'm telling AZMAT System that this used cash flow date 1, CF date 1, which is here. Or you could have that way, or, and actually incidentally, although I've got this whole area there, but because the actual dates and numbers are only up to here, cash flows, AZMAT System will go on checking one by one, each cell until it comes across a blank cell. And then it will go above that. So, right, that's my cash flow date 1 area. So even though you could have defined the value up to there, cash flow date 1 area, but effectively that's where your cash flows are, and that's what it will use. So you can either define previously here, like as I have got here, CF date 1, CF date 2, and so on, or I can simply point out. So if I don't put anything here, if this is blank, then AZMAT System says, right, I haven't specified which cash flow to use. Then it'll ask me with the dialog box to point to. Either I can point to, or I can actually enter the reference. For example, this is row 4, column 4 to row 10, column 5. So the cash flow can be either from previously defined cash flow area in any worksheet. Remember, it doesn't have to be in here. It could be on any other worksheet of any open workbook or any open file. So remember, you can start the command has to be started or used from any worksheet which has the AZMAT worksheet. And that AZMAT worksheet must have the AZ parameters area. But the cash flow itself can be from any worksheet of any open workbook. That workbook or file that does not have to be this one. It could be any other. And that one does not have to have the AZMAT worksheet or AZ parameters area. So the cash flow could be from a CSV file, which you've got it from somewhere else, wherever, or any file. As long as that file can be opened in Excel, it can be used
in as a source of the cash flows. Values from the AZ parameters area are used to calculate present value. If in the AZ parameters area, the cash flow is either not specified, like here, I haven't put any number here. If it's not specified, or the specified area did not exist. So if I enter, for example, 23, excuse me, I'm telling AZMAT System to use CF date 3, cash flow area called CF date 3, and that, if that does not exist. So for example, if I look here, define names, name manager, tells me what all the names are, define names, and you can see I have CF date 1, 2, 3, all the way up to CF date 1. Then I have DF discount factor dates 1 and 2 and so on, discount factor result and so on. But I don't have any other defined name because they are in alphabetical order. I don't need to go down, but I can see, you can see that there is no cash flow area called, there's no name called CF date 23. I have up to CF date 1 to 8. So if I close that, so by putting number 23, I'm telling AZMAT System to use CF date 23. So either if this name does not exist, or if I delete that, I haven't defined, I haven't told AZMAT System to use any particular CF date area, then it will ask the user to specify the cash flow by simply selecting the relevant area with the mouse. Values from the AZ parameters area are used to calculate present value. If in the AZ parameters area, that is this area, that's my AZ parameters area, the cash flow is either not specified or the specified area did not exist, AZMAT System will prompt the user for cash flow area and continue with the command. If, however, there was an error in any other parameter, AZMAT System will notify the error and end the command. So only for the cash flow, either if you don't specify it, or if the specified area does not exist, then it will prompt you for the cash flow area. You can specify it with the mouse, point it with the mouse. Later on, it'll give a dialog box. If you don't know what dialog box is, then find out when we in later sessions. But if the excuse me. So only for the cash flow area, you have the AZMAT System will let the user know what's to actually specify. But if the error exists in any other parameters, as we've seen before, curve file name, or the cash flow result, the PV method, yield basis, yield frequency, or anything else, the calculation method, the AZMAT System will notify the user and end the command. Right? It won't continue with the command. Only if the cash flow is not specified, it will continue with the command by giving you the option, the user the option to specify the actual cash flow area. A present value command is used from the X menu if present value command is used from the X menu, that is from here, AZMAT System clears the contents of the yield cell, contents of the yield cell and enters the result of the present value calculation in the present value cell, which is here, within that AZ parameters area. The result is also displayed in a message box, like on the screen. But the display is suppressed. That is, display is not shown if the display results feature is turned off. Use display results on off command from the U menu. So from the U menu, if you have the display results, you can have it, this feature can be turned on or off. So if this feature is turned off, then it won't display in a message box as well. It will display the result only here in the cell. Reason why you will use the result display feature, results feature on or off is if you were, for example, using this command while you were somewhere away, right? Somewhere up there I was here, and I want to calculate. So if I use a add in and the present value, it will display the result in the present value cell of the AZ parameters area, which is here. I could be well away from somewhere else on this spreadsheet, on this particular worksheet, or I could be in a different worksheet altogether. So if I wanted to see the result wherever I am there, I'd rather see the result on the screen. So I'll have the display results on there if that's what I want. But if I'm here, I know I'm here, I don't particularly want to see the result and a display in a message box as well, because I can see it here. I'll have that display results feature off. We'll go into all these things later on. I'm just going to go through this right now, basic what the command is, and then later on you'll see in later tutorials we will go in very much detail for each command. Right, if Control V command is used, so instead of using this command from X menu, present value there, instead of using that here, this command from here, if I simply have like here, select a cell, one or more cells, and use Control V by holding down the Control key and pressing the letter V. If I use that, then AZMAT System enters the present value or values depending on the number of cells selected. So if I have, for example, if I wanted all 5 present values, depending on the present value method, whether you use a bid, offer, mid, this is a special P and B. I have got so up to 5 present values you can collect. We can calculate. So if I have, depending on the number of present value methods I've specified, so if I'm saying B, that means only I'm interested in the bid present value. If I say BM or MB, like that, the order, depending on the order, that's what it will enter. So if I have BM, it will enter in the first, and I have to select 2 cells, either this way, or I could select horizontally, but they must be adjacent. The first one will be B, bid, present value, and if I have the M, second one, then have the mid, present value. Right. That's what it will show. So depending on the number, you can have up to 5 present values calculated and entered in the current cells. It also enters the present value in the current cells and in the PV, present value cell, as well.
in the AZ parameters area. It also clears the contents of the yield cell, as we saw before. The result is not displayed in a message box, even if the display results feature is turned on. So remember, if you've got the if you use Control V command, even if this feature in the U menu, display results feature is on, it will not display in a message box because that's pointless. Wherever your current cell is, the result is there already. Plus here, of course. I could be on another worksheet, but wherever I am in my current cell or cells, the result is displayed. So there is no point in displaying it in a message box as well. That's why it will not display in a message box, even if you have got that display results feature is turned on. Control V is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate and enter the present value in any cell or cells of your choice in any worksheet of any open workbook. Before using this command, please place the cursor in the desired cell or cells. Note that AZMAT System will override the contents of the current cell or cells with the calculated present value or values. So don't put, for example, don't put it like that, where you got some other values here, because they will be overwritten. If, say, in this case, I wanted the present value, two present values, bid and made or bid and offer, then you have to select two cells. Don't select cells where you actually have some other values if you wanted to keep those values. Of course, if you wanted to override, there's no problem. It will override. So it's up to you. You decide where you want it. AZMAT System will enter the results exactly where you want it. But you should be aware that it will override values, any values in the current cells. Next one, yield. So if you go here, X menu, yield. Very similar to the present value command, because most of the things I'm going to say are same as for present value. As I said, these two commands are very close together. They are related, and you'll see later. So the same thing applies here for the yield as well. This command calculates the yield using the following parameters. Very similar, except one thing. It uses the curve, PV method, yield basis, yield frequency, calculation method, cash flow. Same. All those five are the same as for present value, except yield. When you're calculating yield, you can also specify the present value here. But that's optional. It's up to you. If you want to, you can specify the present value as well to calculate the yield. Any valuation command in the AZMAT System can be started from just like that for the present value. Same thing applies to yield. If present value is not provided, present value is not provided by you, by the user, AZMAT System will first calculate the present value and then use that value to calculate the yield. So if present value is provided, it will be used to calculate the yield. So if you say certain present value here, if you specify it here, AZMAT System will use that present value to calculate the yield. But if you don't specify anything here, if this is blank, nothing is there. Remember, there is a big difference between having a blank cell
and actually having 0 here. If you had 0 here, you're telling AZMAT System to use present value as 0 to calculate the yield. If you had a blank cell, then you're telling AZMAT System to calculate the present value and then calculate the yield. As you notice, as I said before, when the present value is 0, as it says here, when PV, present value PV is 0, yield is actually IRR, internal rate of return. The definition of internal rate of return is it's the yield when the present value is 0. Okay, next bit here. AZMAT System always clears the contents of the yield cell and enters. So when you're asking it to calculate the yield by using either there from the X menu, this command, press number 2 here, second command yield, you press that, or if you use say Control Y somewhere, anywhere else, one or more cells, then first thing it does is always clears the contents of the current value here. You have the yield, whatever is here. If you're asking it to calculate the yield, it will clear whatever is in here before it does the calculation. So AZMAT System always clears the contents of the yield cell and enters the result of yield calculation in the yield cell within the AZ parameters area. If present value was not provided, the calculated present value is also entered in the present value cell, PV cell. If it's not provided, remember 0 is you have provided. This is a special meaning as far as yield is concerned. If you don't want to provide that, if you want AZMAT System to calculate the present value, put it blank. Have nothing there, then AZMAT System will calculate. Even though you're asking it to calculate the yield, it will calculate first the present value, enter the result here, then use that present value to calculate the yield and enter the result here, overwriting whatever is here. The difference here, why we have this yield in blue, or the duration in blue, or here, for example, this is just simply a blank line here, discount factor parameters area here. These two, the reason we have in blue is these are always calculated by AZMAT System. Anything in yellow here is something you, the user, can actually enter and give that value for AZMAT System to use. That's why I have here in yellow. I think this may be confusing here. I have it here somewhere from previous calculations. I had temporarily copied. I'm going to clear that. And in fact, I'm just going to do simple copy that. Copy that there. Format, for example. Just wanted to completely clear that and not have it might be confusing. Or this one yellow as well. In fact, that as well. I shouldn't have it there. Format. So I don't want you to get confused. This is the AZ parameters. This is where I am referring to. Wherever you have yellow, it means you can enter values here, and AZMAT System will use the given parameters or values provided by you. You will not be
entering yield or duration to AZMAT system to use in any calculations. That will always be the result calculated by AZMAT system and entered here. And also in the current cells, if you use the control letters, either P, V, or I for internal rate of return, D for discount factor, and so on. So, just to recap, AZMAT system always clears the contents of the yield cell and enters the result of yield calculation in the yield cell within the AZ parameters area. So this is the AZ parameters area. In this cell, it always calculates, first clears it, and then calculates and enters the result there. If present value was not provided, the calculated present value is also entered in the present value cell there. If you don't provide it, if nothing is there, it will calculate present value and enter the result there. If any present value is there, and you don't want AZMAT system to use that to calculate the yield, then clear it first. It's very important. These two are, present value and yield, are related very much. So do not have any value left here if you do not want AZMAT system to use that as the present value to calculate the yield. If you wanted to calculate yield and present value, clear that cell. It will calculate first, even though you've asked it to calculate yield, it will calculate present value first, enter the result there for present value, and then calculate and enter the result for the yield here. The cash flow. Now this command, as we've seen before, this command can be used as follows. By clicking the yield command from the X menu, as I've said before, there, clicking that the yield command from X menu, or by first selecting the result cell or cells, like that, result cell or cells, and then using Control Y. Press the Y key while holding down the Control key. The cash flow can be either from previously defined cash flow area, just like for the present value, same thing applies. Either it can be here. So cash flow, if I enter here, say 2, means use cash flow, CF date 2 there, CF date 2, cash flow date 2, use that. Or if I have it blank, nothing there, then I can specify cash flow. I don't have to use the full, for example, I can use just that if that's what I want, or just that, or that, by specifying the cash flow by using the mouse. When the command starts, it'll ask you. So the cash flow is something you can always specify after the command is started as well. But all the other parameters must be there before the command is begun, just like the present value. Values from the AZ parameters area are used to calculate yield. If in the AZ parameters area the cash flow is either not specified or the specified area did not exist, AZMAT system will prompt the user for cash flow area and continue with the command. If, however, there was an error in any other parameters area, just like for the present value, AZMAT system will notify the error and end the command. So all the other parameters, except the cash flow, must be present and valid. If they are invalid, for example, you could say enter the cash calculation method. Can only be 1 or 2. If
If you enter 3 or nothing there, it will say, well, if there is no, you must specify it before it actually begins. Or the other things, you have various other things, PV method, yield basis, and so on. If these are wrong, so instead of 0 to 4, it could be you enter 5 or nothing. It's an error. AZMAT System will let you know with an error message that there's an error there. Correct it first before using the command. But for cash flow, if it does not exist, or if it's an incorrect, or if you haven't specified, it will ask you, prompt the user to enter, to point basically the cash flow by mouse, or enter it in the dialog box, what it should be. If yield command is used from the X menu, that is from here, X menu, if I use it here, if the yield command is used from the X menu, AZMAT System clears the contents of the yield cell, clears the contents of the yield cell there, and enters the result of the yield calculation in the yield cell within the AZ parameters area. If the present value was not provided, like here, present value is not provided, the calculated present value is also entered in the present value cell, PV cell. If you don't provide it, you calculate that and enter the result in there. Result is also displayed in a message box, but the display is suppressed if the display results feature is turned off. As we saw before, from the utility menu, if you have the display results feature, can be turned on or off. So if you click once, if it's off, it'll turn it on. And the next time, if you want to turn it off, you just use it, you click it again, the command, then it'll turn the result off. And actually say so, give a message box saying the results will now turn off or on. So you know what is the current feature, current value of this particular command is, whether the display results is turned on or off. And the same thing here, if you use actually just like for present value, if a control key is used. So if you say control Y command is used to calculate yield instead of from the menu, instead of from using there, I use control key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 5 here. I can have same as that. Or just 1 control Y. If I use that control Y, then the result is entered in the current cell or cells, and in the yield cell here, in the AZ parameters area, and if present value was not provided, the calculated present value is also entered in the PV cell. Result is not displayed in the message box, even if the display result feature is turned on. Same like present value. If you actually use control key, control V for value or control Y for yield, then the result is not displayed in a message box on the screen. It's only entered in the current cells. Control Y is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate the and enter the yield and calculate the yield or yields in any cell or cells of your choice in any worksheet of any workbook. Before using this command, please place the cursor in the desired cells. Note that AZMAT System will override the contents of the current cell or cells
with the calculated yield or yields. So same as before, do not select cells like that for Y. So don't then enter, say, Control Y, because all these cells will be overwritten with the calculated yield results. Next one, present value and yield. So if I go here, add in X, present value and yield. Now I'm not going to go through this because it'll just be a repeat of the previous two commands, except to let you know the difference. Very simple. Present value and yield. So remember, present value was Control V, V for value, Control Y for yield, Y for yield. But if you want to calculate present value and yield in one command, then you can use Control B, B for both. Okay, B for both, or B for Bravo. Present value and yield, if you want to calculate both, use Control B, or use this command, present value and yield, in which case it will calculate whatever is here before, calculate and enter the present value and enter the yield here. So it uses exactly the same parameters as for the present value. Uses a curve, rates find the curve, PV method, PV methods there. You can just about see that, B for bit. Yield basis, yield frequency. I'll have to take this off in order to show yield basis and yield frequency. Calculation method, 1 or 2. And of course, the cash flow by specifying a number here or by pointing it out with the mouse later on. So all the other description is same as before for the present value and yield, so there's no point going through it. The only difference is the Control B, B for both, you should use if you want to calculate and get it to enter the present value and yield both together. So you select two cells in this case, for example, and use Control B. All the other things are the same as before we have been there. Very quickly, I'm going to read through here. If present value and yield command is used from the X menu, present value and yield command used from the X menu, AZMAT system enters the result of calculations in the cells of present value, PV, and yield within the AZ parameters area. The results are also displayed in a message box, but the display is suppressed if the display results feature is turned off, like before. If Control B command is used, like here, if I say Control B, is used to calculate present value and yield, AZMAT system enters the present value and yield in the current cells and also in the cells for the PV and yield when within the AZ parameters area. The results are not displayed in a message box even if the display result feature is turned on. Okay, whenever you use the Control key, only enters here and there. And there is a parameter, not on the screen in this display box. Control B is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate and enter the present value and yield in any two cells of your choice in any worksheet of any workbook, any open workbook, I should say. Because you can't enter the results in the
in the current cell, so you have to have the workbook or file open. Before using this command, please place the cursor in the desired cells. Note that, as before, AZMAT System will override the contents of the current cells with the calculated present value and yield. So don't put it here, for example. It'll enter the present value and yield in that order. First present value, then yield. And so don't put it somewhere we already have some values, something there, or like that, unless you want it overwritten, because it will override. So the next one now we'll go through is internal rate of return. Add in X menu, internal rate of return, which, as we briefly mentioned several times in this tutorial and other tutorial, Control I enters calculated internal rate of return in current cell. So internal rate of return, you can use this command from the X menu there, or select one cell and press Control I for internal rate of return, IRR. This command also uses same parameters as for present value. So, for example, here we have the curve, PV method, yield basis, yield frequency, cash flow, and the calculation method, same as present value. And the same thing applies as for the present value and yield. For example, any variation command, so including internal rate of return, can be started from any worksheet in any workbook, as long as that workbook contains a worksheet called AZMAT, and that AZMAT worksheet must have a parameters area called AZ. As long as you have that, you can start from any worksheet in a workbook. Note, whether present value is provided or not, AZMAT System will set the present value to 0. Right? So when you ask it to calculate internal rate of return, so even if I had the present value here, some present value, it will not use it, because definition of internal rate of return is when PV is the yield when the present value, which is PV, is equal to 0. So even if you enter some present value here and then use this command to calculate internal rate of return by either using Control I or using from the menu, add-ins, X menu, internal rate of return to calculate, it will enter 0 here. AZMAT System will enter 0. So whether present value is provided or not by you or the user, AZMAT System will set the present value to 0, because that is when the present value is 0, the calculated yield is called internal rate of return, IRR. So it enters in the present value 0, and in the yield cells enters the calculated yield, which is actually IRR. This command can be used as follows: by clicking on the internal rate of return command from the X menu, like we've done here, or by first selecting the result cell and then using Control I. So I could say here, and then I say Control I, press Control key, and while holding down Control key, press the I key, I for internal rate of return. It'll enter the result here, as well as here, which is the yield, but enter also 0 here.
AZMAT System will do that. And that's your internal rate of return. Same thing applies for cash flows as we have done before for PV or yield. If you don't enter anything, it'll prompt you for that. And the other things are also exactly the same for the cash flow and that. Only for the cash flow, if it doesn't exist or if you have entered an incorrect cash flow area, it'll prompt you for that. All the other parameters must be present, must be provided by you before the command is used, and they must be valid, as it says here. Yield basic can only be 0 to 4 inclusive. Yield frequency can be A, annual, S for semi-annual, Q for quarterly, or 1 to 7. And you'll see what it is later on. We'll go through it later on in other tutorials. So if internal rate of return command is used from the X menu, that is, if you use the command from here, internal rate of return command is used from the X menu. AZMAT System enters 0 in the present value PV cell. AZMAT System enters in the present value there, enters 0 there, and the result of IRR calculations, that is yield when PV is equal to 0, enter parameters area. The result is also displayed in a message box, but the display is suppressed if the display results feature is turned off, just like PV and the yield. If Control I command is used to calculate internal rate of return, so if I select a cell instead, anywhere, and say enter, hold down the Control key and Control I, if that command is used in the current, so AZMAT System enters the internal rate of return in the current cell and in the yield cells within the AZ parameters area. It also enters 0 in the present value PV cell because AZMAT System does not want you to, or rather, it actually wants you to make sure, it wants to ensure that you know that this is IRR. If it didn't enter, it could be any yield, but the present value has been deleted. So you don't know for sure this is IRR. You will only know for sure this is IRR, internal rate of return. This yield is that when the PV is equal to 0. So to make sure that that is so, it enters 0 there and then enters the calculated yield, which will be the internal rate of return here. Okay, all the other things very similar to the other. The Control I is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate and enter the internal rate of return in any cell of your choice in any worksheet of any open workbook, just like the PV and the yield. And note that the AZMAT System will overwrite the contents of the current cell within the calculated internal rate of return, with the calculated internal rate of return. Okay, so don't enter it somewhere here. It will overwrite that with the internal rate of return. So enter it in a blank cell, or if indeed you wanted it to overwrite whatever is here, then do that by all means. Next one, Macaulay's duration. Add in X menu, Macaulay's duration. Control M for Macaulay.
or M for mother. So Control M enters Macaulay's duration single discount rate calculation in current cell. If I have one cell selected like here, it will enter the Macaulay's duration here. Now, we'll go through in detail what exactly it is later on if you don't know. But for now, I'm only going to go through the actual how to use the command, where the commands are, not what they actually are. This is, you'll have to see later tutorials for the actual, most likely in investment banking calculations tutorial. We'll go through because this is particularly this and all these terms or investment banking calculation terms are. So in this tutorial, just going through the actual command, how to use, when to use, and what it actually requires. So Macaulay's duration is a single discount rate calculation. Enters that in the current cell if you use Control M, or if you use the command from here, Macaulay's duration, it will enter the result here, duration, in there. This command calculates Macaulay's duration in years. Right? It's actually in years, in brackets shown that it's in years. But in years using the following parameters. It uses the curve file. Not necessarily that, whatever you enter, it will use that particular curve file. The PV method there. Calculation method, so I'm going to take this off. So the PV method here, in this case, the bid calculation method, and the cash flow. So same as any other valuation command, they can be started from any worksheet in any workbook, as long as that workbook contains a worksheet called AZMAT, and the AZMAT worksheet must have a parameters area defined as a Z. There, AZ, that's the parameters area. Defined as AZ, it is in a worksheet called AZMAT. Then you could have several worksheets here, whatever worksheet, and it will use that. Then you can use this particular command or any valuation command from any worksheet. AZMAT system always enters the result of Macaulay's duration calculation in the duration cell there within the AZ parameters area. It enters 0 in the present value PV cell, just like for the yield IRR calculation. When you're doing IRR calculation, enters 0. So it enters 0 in the present value PV cell, and the result of the internal rate of return calculations yield when PV is equal to 0 in the yield cell within the AZ parameters area. Okay, remember that. So when you calculate Macaulay's duration, the internal rate of return IRR, the internal rate of return IRR of the bond is used as the single discount rate for all future cash flows. That's why it calculates the present, actually not calculate present value, it enters 0 there, calculates the yield when the present value is 0. That means when the yield when the present value is 0 is called IRR, internal rate of return, so enters the result there and uses that internal rate of return as the single discount rate. Internal rate of bond is used as a single discount rate for all future cash flows and enters the result duration in years in this cell. Now these terms will be completely new to you now, perhaps if you're not working in an investment bank, but they will become clearer later on if you go to in future tutorials what they are, how they're calculated, why they're, what's the relationship between these different investment banking terms are. But it'll take time. You won't learn it in a day or two, but you will learn as long as you stay with it and you watch the later tutorials of AZMAT System, is particularly the investment banking module. So here I'm simply explaining to you which the commands, how to use the commands and what actually it does. So to calculate the duration, so when you use the duration command, say from here, Macaulay's duration. When you use that command, either by using the Macaulay's duration command here from the X menu of AZMAT System, or say have it set anywhere here, there, wherever, on any worksheet here in this particular workbook, for example, press Control M for mother, or M for Macaulay's duration. So Control key, hold down, press M. Then what it does, first thing it does is enter 0 as if it's calculating the IRR. Think of that. Enter 0 in the PV method, calculates the yield, which is IRR when the PV is equal to 0, when the PV present value is 0, yield is actually IRR. That's the definition of internal rate of return, IRR, and uses that IRR, internal rate of return of the bond, is used as a single discount rate for all future cash flows and enters the result, the duration, in years in this cell, and of course in the current cell if you've used this command by using Control M. So this command can be used as follows. 1, by clicking on the Macaulay's duration from the X menu there, or by first selecting the result cell. So wherever I want the result, first selecting the result cell and then using the Control M. Cash flow can be either from similar to the others, for similar to calculating PV, yield, or IRR. You can either define, you can put a number here, say use cash flow 2, for example. Use cash flow 2, or have it blank, or if this number, if this CF date 2 did not exist, it'll prompt you for the cash flow. And all the other things apply the same. So the valuation is the parameters area used to calculate duration. If in the AZ parameters area the cash flow is either not specified or the specified area did not exist, AZMAT System will prompt the use of cash flow area and continue with the command. If, however, there was an error in any other parameter, i.e. the curve file name, or the file name is there, correct, but it does not exist, or something, or the PV method, or the calculation method, then AZMAT System will inform the user that they notify the error and end the command. Only for the cash flow, it will not end the command, it will prompt you to define the correct cash flow and continue with the command.
any other parameters here, any error, it will just let you know that there is an error, correct that, expects you to correct it before proceeding with the command. If Macaulay's duration command is used from the X menu, if it's used from the X menu, AZMAT System enters the result of the Macaulay's duration calculation in the duration cell within the AZ parameters area. Duration here in years there. Enters result there. Result is also displayed in the message box, but the display is suppressed if the display results feature is turned off. Same as for PV, yield, and the internal rate of return. If Control M command is used to calculate Macaulay's duration, so instead of using command from the menu, we have this Control M command is used to calculate Macaulay's duration, AZMAT System enters Macaulay's duration in the current cell and in the duration cell within the AZ parameters area. Result is not displayed in message box, even if displayed result features. It's just like the other CPU using control key, result is only displayed there, not in a message box, because it's completely unnecessary. Control M is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate and enter the Macaulay's duration in any cell of your choice in any worksheet of any open workbook or open file if you like. I prefer that. Before using this command, please press the cursor in the desired cell. Note that AZMAT System will overwrite the contents of the current cell with the calculated Macaulay's duration. So don't put it somewhere where you want to keep the existing cell contents, because they will be overwritten. So it's up to you. Put it somewhere blank cell where you actually want the result. Next one. Although here, so X menu here, that was Macaulay's duration. Now here is the duration X command. If the yield curve is not flat, now we will see in more detail exactly what the difference is between Macaulay's duration and duration. But for now, it's a separate command, and duration is Control R. I couldn't use the D because D I'm using for discount factors later command, which is very, very duration is not used that often. So I used the R, which was available. I had to decide. I could have used D for that, but I've chosen D for discount factor, which is more heavily used than duration command. So I chose R. Happened to be there is R as use duration or duration. So Control R enters the duration, series of discount rates calculation. Remember, the other one was a single discount rate using the IRR, but we'll go in detail later on. Not go into that exactly what the difference is. Just for now, see, there's a command called Macaulay's duration, Control M, and duration, which is Control R. And to use that particular one as well, exactly the same parameters to calculate duration or Macaulay's duration, AZMAT System requires the curve file name, the PV method, the calculation method, and the cash flow, of course, whatever the cash flow is there, or by just specifying a cash flow method in the CF date number. So this is almost exactly the same as for the Macaulay's duration we saw.
So any valuation command or for the other valuation commands can be started from any worksheet in a workbook, as long as that workbook, remember, must contain an AZMAT worksheet, and that worksheet must contain an AZ parameters area. AZMAT system always clears the contents of both present value and yield cells. So remember, when you're calculating duration, clears both present value and yield, whatever they are, remember, and enters the result of duration calculation in the duration cell within the AZ parameters area. Just going through that previous one, having a look at that. Result Macaulay's duration cell. So for the Macaulay's duration as well, and the duration, the result is entered there. For the duration command, it always clears whatever you have it for present value and yield. And the result is entered in the duration cell within the AZ parameters area. If the yield curve is not flat, a separate discount rate for each cash flow rather than a single one is used to calculate the duration. Now I know it doesn't make any sense probably what it means, yield curve is flat or not, and whether a single discount rate which is used for Macaulay's duration as opposed to the duration. But don't worry at this point on that. All I'd like you to know is here, just to explain to you the commands within the AZMAT system. So in here, we have Macaulay's duration command and also another command called duration. So we'll go into that later, at a later stage when we go into investment banking calculation module, not right now, what the difference is fully, even though of course you can see that if the yield curve is not flat, it's shown here, but it doesn't mean much, I know. May not mean much to you right now. So if the yield curve is not flat, a separate discount rate for each cash flow rather than a single one is used to calculate the duration. This method generates a duration figure that differs from the Macaulay's duration, which uses a single discount rate for all future cash flows. So just very slightly going to cash flows, for example, this is cash flow here for this particular date, that cash flow. Negative figure here, there's a positive figure here at the end, maturity date. So we have here, so for example, anyway, whatever, these, I'm not going to go through this, I said, different cash flows, date, cash flow date, amount, cash flow date, amount. So this method generates a duration figure that differs from the Macaulay's duration. We use a single discount rate. This one, separate discount rate for each cash flow is used rather than a single one. So this command can be used as follows: by clicking the duration command, as we saw from the X menu, or by first selecting a cell and saying, and entering Control R for duration. The cash flow can be either from previously defined, just like the others. I'm not going to go through it to bore you. Exactly the same as before, all the other valuation commands, same levels for the cash flows. If duration command is used from the X menu, AZMAT system enters the result of duration calculation in the duration cell within the AZ parameters area. Result is also displayed in a message box. but the display is suppressed if the display results feature is turned off as before for the other commands. If Control R is used to calculate duration, AZMAT System enters duration in the current cell here and in the duration cell there within the AZ parameters area. And the result is not displayed in the message box even if the display results feature is turned on. Just like before, it won't display in the message box, only in this current cell and here. Again, Control R is by far the quickest way of getting AZMAT to calculate and enter the duration in any cell of your choice in any worksheet of any open workbook. Before using this command, please place the cursor in the desired cell. Note that the AZMAT System will override the contents of the current cell with the calculated duration. So don't place it anywhere. This applies to any control commands, control key commands as you've seen before. So don't place the cursor where the result will override. Put it in a blank cell, or if you actually want to enter the result there, AZMAT System enters result there, then by all means put it where you have something already. Otherwise, enter it in a blank cell. We're nearly getting to the end. Now here, next one is check dates for holidays. Note that we also had this command, check dates for holidays. I've entered the same command here and in the utility menu, if I can find it there, check dates for holidays. Exactly the same command. Command is the actual command within AZMAT System is in one particular area. They're not two separate commands. They're simply same command is available from the utility menu as well as from the X menu, which is the Excel environment menu. Reason I put it here is very often while you're calculating it here, you're used to this here. You want to continue with this one rather than go to a different menu. That's all. There's no particular difference. The command is exactly the same. And so, for example, if I have, as I had used other places before, if you use, if there was, for example, a Saturday or Sunday, like here it says here, one equal to avoid Saturday or Sunday, it will enter, change the date, the holiday date, to a non-holiday date. We'll go into the detail later, and we have gone into this with other commands, but I'm not going to go through the actual command right now, just going to describing what that command is. So from add in, if I go here, check dates for holidays, what it does, any date in the specified date list, like date, there, doesn't have to be all the dates. You could say only up to from here to there, maybe, or here to there. So any date in the specified date list following on a holiday is replaced. So this command replaces any dates in the original dates column which fall on a holiday as defined by the holidays check parameters within the AZ parameters area. So the holidays parameters area here, as you can see here, replaces holiday dates in the DF date, for example, here. So you have here, although we are saying DF date, discount factor dates, but this is the holiday parameters area. 1 equal to avoid Saturday or Sunday. So if I enter 1 here, it means avoid Saturday or Sunday. If it has anything other than 1, or if it's blank, it will not avoid Saturday or Sunday. If the original dates are to be preserved, the user should first copy the dates to another location and give AZMAT System that location for the dates to be checked for holidays. So, for example, you wanted to keep these dates, DF date 1, and one of them happened to be Saturday or Sunday, or indeed fall in whenever these bank holidays for these, as we'll go later on. Copy that. Copy those dates somewhere else and say, right, use that particular dates and use the command to replace the holiday dates. So your original dates are safe and sound here because it will replace the dates with the new dates by avoiding whatever you've asked for, checking. So if you want to preserve your original dates, copy the dates somewhere else and use that area for the command. Any valuation command, same as before, can be started. Any works, this also applies to that. All 4 holidays check parameters. Here, these are the holidays. So replaces holiday days in the DF date. I'm using following discount factor DF date discount, but it doesn't happen because the reason is the discount factor date is the actual, just it has the dates only. So most likely you'll be using the DF date to replace the holidays, to check for holiday dates, and then use those dates to calculate the discount factors. But you could also then use those dates, if you like, for cash flow or anything else, indeed. So the 4 holidays check parameters are used. All 4 holidays check parameters are used. So one is the avoid Saturday or Sunday. DF dates to avoid are these special dates. Now notice I have got here numbers. As I've said in other tutorials, Microsoft Excel does not actually use the date, for example, Wednesday, the 29th of August, 2018, like that. It converts that to a number like that. So for example, if I to show you what that is, copy that, copy. And for example, here, I enter paste spatial and values. So that Wednesday, 29th of August, 2018 is actually 43,341. That number. Microsoft Excel uses that number for that date. It does not care what format you have. You could have it like this, day, then in this case, it's the date, then the month and the year, or you could have it not that, but for example, like that, 26th August 2017. Not the actual day, like here I have Wednesday. So it doesn't care what format you use, the date. Converts the date into a number. And that number, internally, that number is used, which has its advantages because whenever you need to specify more than one date, for example, all you need to enter is the actual number, convert it in there and enter number. And like I can use lots of arrays here. I could use the dates as well like that, but it is much simpler, better to use a number. So comma, another that, and enter the whole lot as an array. We'll go through this later on, exactly what they are in later tutorial. This tutorial rather,
I'm just explaining various commands. We'll go in each and every command in AZMAT system in detail, but that is for it later on. But remember, for now, that the dates here, I'm telling AZMAT system, you are telling rather, when you use on your system, dates to avoid these special dates. I've just used SP to short special dates. And the dates are entered as an array. If there was only one date, I could just enter the number 39441. But if it's more than one, which very likely you might have, you enter them in one cell, remember, and I can enter lots of them, not just three, several. There is a limit to how many you can enter in an array, but for now, so basically enter 1, 2, 3 in this case, and then enter as an array. I'm going to press the escape key to cancel this copy command, because as you can see, since I've got copy command this here, select destination, press enter or choose space. Excel will keep prompting me until I press the escape key to cancel the command. There, I've entered the escape key, cancel the copy command, it's back to ready. Always do that. If you're finished with the command, press the escape key. It's the quickest way canceling a command. And make sure you have ready here. That means, right, you're back to normal Excel usage. Don't go around, keep that. For example, if I have copy command open, I'll explain to you, or rather before that, right now it is ready. Just write it out, just explain to you there. And if I have here, insert cells, says so, right? Or delete cells. Delete cells here, delete rows, column cells. But let's look at this insert cells, it says here. When I have just a cell selected there, and I have here ready, not necessarily one cell, but whatever. And see what happens if I have copy command. I've entered copy there, and I have select destination, press enter view. And if I simply point it here, what does it say? Insert copied cells. So insert cell command is changed to insert copied cells. If you can just read that. It will go away as soon as move, but you can insert copied cells, because I've got the copy command active right now. But this only happens here in later versions of Excel, not necessarily in older versions of Excel. Remember that. So cancel the copy command there by pressing escape key, which I will press now. There. See, so it does have effect on other commands. So cancel any command which you're not using. Press the escape key first. Right, let's have a quick look at this command. So here we can use, when you use this command, check dates for holidays, it's not just going for that, avoid Saturday or Sunday. It's using all 4 parameters in the AZ parameters area. So it's got this first one, the weekends, for example, Saturday or Sunday. In all Western countries, there are holidays. And in here, dates to avoid, special dates. So here we have the date array, that as well. And then you have the dates to avoid bank holidays for, in this case, although you could when you have here, for example, the cursor is there, you can only see one currency name, the first currency name in an array, just like here, 39441. It displays only the first, but it has 3 dates internally converted as numbers. Right. Here is where I have an array of 2 currencies, GBP, British pound sterling, and US dollars, USD. but it only displays the first. Similarly here, Deutschmark, DEM, GBP, JPY, Japanese yen, and US dollar, USD. I have 4 currencies here, but it displays the first one, first in the array. So always don't assume what you see here, what is shown is that currency. It doesn't mean days to avoid special days in German holidays, Deutschmark only. If you put the cursor, put it there, you'll see, you think it's only got one currency, put the cursor there. Then you can see it has more currencies. And here, if I put it, I can see I have 2 currencies, and so on. So days to avoid the bank holidays for basically British bank holidays and US bank holidays. By specifying the currency name, I'm telling AZMAT System to avoid the bank holidays for these 2 countries. I have entered the currencies. I know GBP, they're not countries, but I mean, what I mean by telling AZMAT System, keep it simple, is the countries of which to which these currencies belong. So I'm telling AZMAT System to avoid the bank holidays for country which has GBP and as its currency, and the country US dollar, USD, which is America. Avoid the bank holidays of those 2 currencies, those 2 countries. And again, in here, special dates. I have here, for example, the special dates here. These special dates, they do not belong to any currencies or any countries. They are special dates I want AZMAT System to avoid when checking the dates. But here, special dates, these are the currencies which are defined in that particular currency curve. Okay, we'll go into detail exactly where they are defined, but avoid here the special dates for those currencies. So the dates which are checked for holidays are as is specified by the user for df date parameter in the AZ area of AZMAT worksheet in any workbook except a rates file. So remember that. I could have the df dates here, discount factor dates here, in any worksheet. It doesn't have to be in this particular worksheet. They can be in any, the actual df dates, the discount factor date, like here, I've defined here, except a rates file, for example, zr_usd.xlsx. It must not be the discount factor dates specified in any rates file. So let's to show you, just to describe briefly what it is, I'm going to open a curve for view. US dollar. It's going to tell me it's not calculated, it can't be used in this because I haven't calculated yet. But that's all right. I know that. I'm going to open only for view. See, it's just letting me know that needs to be edited today before it can be used in any calculations in AZMAT System. We have gone through that in various other tutorials. We won't go into that. Why? So, for example, here, the dates I have here, holidays check for curve grid points, example data. Weekends in here, days to avoid these special days. I can't, if I click here, I can't see it because I've opened for read only. And in these later versions of Excel, like Excel 2007, 2010, and so on, if this area is protected as I have here, can't put anywhere because it's all protected and locked. AZMAT System won't even let me go there. See, I'm clicking the mouse, but it won't get there anywhere because it's all locked. And the spreadsheet is locked. So AZMAT System won't even let me go there, let alone change it, because I've opened as read only, because I've opened in view mode. So we can't actually see that. So this is in the curve itself, you have the dates to avoid special dates, and dates to avoid bank holidays for these currencies. They're again here and there, similar to the one we have in AZ parameters area. But you can't use, for example, these dates here at all. They are the discount factor days AZMAT System uses, but you cannot use the discount factor days like here in this particular here maturity date column here, but discount factor days in any rates curve files. This is ZR USD equals XLSX. It's a rates file. Cannot use those dates. They must be in any worksheet. So it doesn't have to be in AZMAT worksheet. It could be in any other worksheet. As we go into later tutorials, we will go and practice, use all these commands, different versions, but each of these commands could take maybe even half an hour or more to show you various versions of that command. So we're not going to go through that now in this tutorial, other than to let you know that the discount factor dates, like here df date 1, I could say here in this worksheet or any other worksheet except in any rates file. Okay? You cannot use the df dates, define it in a rates file and say, right, use that. There must not be, because it has a specific meaning and use, and that's why that is so. So the dates which are checked for holidays are as specified by the user for df date parameter, which is here, df date 1 here, but the actual df date you can see here, df discount factor method. In here you have got df date result, but the df date there, for example, if I put here df date, very briefly, if it's equal to 100, it means use the cf date. So whatever the cf date is, cf date 2, if I put 100 here, what I mean is actually use the dates in as defined in cf date 2. But if I put it here, number 2, it means use df date 2. Anything other than 100, any number other than 100, it means use that. So if I enter 2 here, it means df date 2 there. Use those dates. If I enter 1, df date 1. But if I put 100 here, and I have 2 here in cf date, first thing, 100 means use cf date. And so whatever cf date here, number 2, use that, dates of that. If I had 1 here, it would mean, and 100 there, it would mean use the cf date. And if I have 1 here, it will use cf date 1 dates. Hope it's clear. It will become clearer as we actually do some examples later on. So, use date, if you have the df date 100 has a specific meaning. The reason is most of the time you are using the cash flows dates, so you may want to check those dates very quickly. Have a check. That's how you check that. By entering this 100 here or the cf date 1, you don't have to copy those somewhere else in the df dates and so on. So to use that, dates which are checked for as specified by the user for df date parameter in the AZ df date parameter in the AZ area of AZMAT worksheet in any workbook except a rates file. Use df date equal to 100, use cf date. It must be specified. in order to use. You cannot not have it, anything. You must specify that, whatever. And the use df date from this worksheet may be specified. You could say, if you had a worksheet called sheet 1, for example, or 2 or 3, whatever, you could say enter sheet 2. So AZMAT System will use the df date, say for example df date 5 from worksheet sheet 2 of workbook. Does not even need to be here. It could be anywhere else. Something else. Does not have to be AA.XLS. Could be anywhere else. Other, remember, other than a rates file. Cannot be a rates file, but it can be any other workbook or worksheet in any workbook. So if you have the df date, so df date may be specified, the df date from this worksheet may be specified, doesn't have to be. And the workbook also may be specified, it's not compulsory. But this is compulsory. Either you must have 100, in which case you start using CF dates, or you must say what actually it is. DF date 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. CF date, question mark. CF date, question mark means 1 to 99. It must be specified, CF date, if DF date is equal to 100. If you have put 100 here in DF date, it means use whatever I have specified for CF date. So this must be specified if DF date is equal to 100. If DF date was not 100, then it has nothing to do with CF date. You have to specify that DF date here. Any number other than 100 means use that DF date. Must be specified. And the CF date from this worksheet, again, if this is 100, this worksheet may be specified, workbook may be specified. So the cash flow date, whatever it is, could be from a different worksheet, different workbook, whatever. If this is 100, use all that from there. If it's not 100, then use it from here. Worksheet and a workbook may be, both may be specified, do not have to. In which case it will use this particular worksheet or workbook. Now, lastly, discount factors. X menu. Result, discount factor dates in column, discount factor command. You can use either from the menu here or use Control D. D for discount factor, discount factor, so D for discount factor, okay, or D for delta. So you use that either, this command can be used either from the X menu here, or you use Control D. So for example, here I have discount factor results here. I have defined it here as df res 1. So res short for result. The reason I've used short here, so I can see the whole name here in this box. So df result 1, for example, here, top one cell is defined here. So I can use the command I can use. So here, Control D, it means enter the discount factor, the dates, the maturity dates in this column, and the actual discount factors there, depending on what I have used for the discount factor method. So in this case, I have got M and B, mid discount factor, bid discount factor. I've got 2. So the result will be in 3 columns. First column is always the date, and the other, in this case, the number of columns will depend on the number of methods I will specify. So if there are 2 methods, you have 2 discount factors, and so on. So let's go through this command quickly. Result, discount factor dates in column 1 and discount factors in columns 2 and 3, etc. So in this case, I have 2. So in fact, what I'm going to do is actually, let's just do it here. Split the screen in 2 so we can see both. So I have here discount factor. We've been through actually for the cash flows one. For the holidays, we're using the DF days. So exactly the same thing as the actual for the dates. So here, Control D enters discount factors in current cells and below. Remember, so from here, top and below. So don't have anything underneath here which you want to keep. Okay? So ideally, you should use it with nothing here at all, anywhere and below, which you want to keep. Remember, there may be, there will be overwritten depending on the number of discount factor results we have. So Control D enters calculated discount factors in current cells and below. Now, discount factors may not mean the words discount factors may mean nothing to you at this point in time. Right now, in this tutorial, we're just going through the actual command, what it is. The actual words, the term discount factor, what it is, will take quite a long time to explain, and several AZMAT worksheets to show how it's calculated and so on. We will go through in later tutorials. It's a very specialized topic. And right now, all I would like to explain here is how to use a particular command, and in this case, the discount factor command. And we will get to know the actual what the term means and so on, how it's calculated in later AZMAT System tutorials. Most likely in AZMAT System investment banking calculations command, and also programming, because it is a lot of several intermediate calculation files and literally hundreds of lines of program code is used to calculate these various terms. So just to go through the actual command, Control D enters discount factors in current cells and below. Remember, the first column is the date of the discount factor. I'm using this here. The format is different. Day, month, year. This is we are in UK here, so using the day, month, year. In America, they will enter month, day, year. But in this case, I'm just using the numbers here just to make the column. Column doesn't have to be that wide. It can be entered in many places. But you can enter you can change the format to whatever you like. But in this case, for example, hopefully it is clear, even though we are using the date, month, but because I'm using the month as in letters rather than numbers here, so it is clear that it is 1st of September, 31st of August, and so on. Right, so the first column is the date column of the discount factors, or whatever the actual, the dates, the discount factor dates, the specified discount factor dates, I should say.
because you have to specify the dates to use for which you want AZMAT system to calculate the discount factors. So these dates are the actually specified dates. AZMAT system is not calculating these dates. They are the dates you, the user, has told AZMAT system to use to calculate the discount factors. These are the discount factors, and they are in the same order as here specified. So discount factor method. So in this case, I have here all of them, which means all 5. So bid, offer, mid, and special discount factor. This is I'm using D, and special discount factor F. I'm only using D and F as special ones here because this is discount factor. Note for the present value, I'm using P and B for the similar special the methods. So just using D and F for special methods. There are also the bid method, offer method, and the mid method, and these two are special. We'll go into explain later on later tutorial what they are and what it means and so on. But for now, if you have specified all, just A here for all, it will calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same applies for present value. All, if you have entered A here, all, it will calculate the 5 present values. Bid, offer, mid, and the special one P and the special one B. So right now for the discount factors, it will calculate and display number of discount factor. The columns would be that plus 1. The first column will always be the maturity, the date column, and then the other columns will depend. The number of columns it will calculate and display will depend on exactly what you want AZMAT system to do. In this case, I've got MB, so M for mid, B for bid. So it has calculated 2 discount factors there, and the first one, it will be in the same order as you have specified. So M is this one, B for bid, this one. If I had put in as BM, it will be the first one will be the bid and the second will be the M mid. So if this command is invoked from the X menu of AZMAT system, from add-in, X menu, and there, if I use this command from here, X menu, discount factors, then the contents of use df res, there, I put 1 here. It means use df res 1. It could be any number from 1 to 99, and you can define. In this case, this one here, top cell, is defined as df res 1. You'll see that if I click the column there, use df res 1. All you need to do is define one cell, the result, the top left corner of the result cell. And AZMAT system will then enter the df date, which you have specified here. In this case, 100 means use CF date 2. So whatever the date in CF date 2 there, use those dates. So you'll enter those dates here and then calculate the mid and the bid discount factor and enter the result there. DF date 2, CF date 2 is 4 days, so you'll enter 4 days. So the result will be there, like that. For these particular values. So I've got 100 here. It means use CF date 2. I have here CF date 2, which we saw CF date 2 is just that. So take those dates, enter the dates there, and then calculate the result. Note that this is not the same. As you can see here, it's got 28th of February. second date, this is 29th of August. Completely different. It doesn't mean anything. It does not mean the first date happens to be the same, but it's not the same. So we'll shortly finish this one here. Let's go quickly and we'll try and finish this one. Then this session is completed. So I won't go into details, just specify you briefly this one here. So if this command is invoked from the X menu of AZMAT system, then the contents of use dfres there determines the contents of that determine where the discount factor results are placed. So because here I have dfres 1 there, it means enter the result there. From that is the top left cell of the area, result area. Okay, so I'm going to right. I'm going to go through this here. This command. So that's where the result will be placed. That noise you heard was a phone buzzing. I'm afraid the phone was on silent and it's buzzing. I was wondering what that noise was because the phone was buzzing. I'll try and quickly finish this. So the contents of the use dfres are placed here. The current selection is ignored and does not determine the destination of discount factor results. Okay, whatever the selection is does not matter. It will go by whatever you have defined here, use dfres 1. So if this command is invoked from the X menu of AZMAT system, then the contents of use dfres determine where the discount factor results are placed. The current selection, so just by selecting here or there doesn't mean anything because you have it specified it by that. This method enables the user to place the results anywhere in any worksheet of any workbook as long as that workbook is already open. This workbook need not contain a worksheet called AZMAT. The results can be placed anywhere. If, however, Control-D is used to invoke this command, then the current selection determines where the discount factor results are placed. So if I press my cell there and I press Control-D, then that will be the top cell. And if I enter here like that, that will be the area where the result will be placed. Then the current selection determines where the discount factor results are placed. The contents of use dfres are ignored. So if you use Control-D, this is ignored, whatever that means or wherever it is. This method enables the user to place results so you can place anywhere in any worksheet as long as that workbook. So here, just a second. This method enables the user, if you use Control-D, then this method enables the user to place the results anywhere in any worksheet of the current workbook, as long as that workbook contains a worksheet called AZMAT. The AZMAT worksheet must have a parameter area defined as AZ. So when you use Control-D, it must have a worksheet called AZMAT, and that AZMAT worksheet must have a parameters, AZ parameters area. But if you use the command from the menu, there, discount factors, the results can be placed anywhere. And that worksheet does not have to have a AZMAT worksheet or AZ parameters area. So the discount factor results are directly dependent upon the parameters provided by the user. If the user enters a 0 in the use df date, if you enter 0 in the use df date cell, AZMAT system will automatically generate the discount factor dates. The generated dates are directly dependent upon the number and frequency of the instruments in the rates curve as is specified in the rates file cell. This one we will actually go in this discount factor command is fairly
complicated and very much in detail, requires a lot more time. So I think what we'll do is we'll continue with this discount factor command again, start from fresh, because this is quite a specialist command rather than just the others, Control V for present value, Control Y for yield. We will go into this in much detail in the next tutorial. So I'll stop this tutorial now, and we'll continue with this session in the next tutorial. So let's stop it now.